Never trust a man who becomes the richest person in American history by selling something everyone needs for just 1 cent an hour. There's always more to the story. What if I told you that the man who controlled 90% of America's oil didn't start with money, connections, or even luck? John D. Rockefeller built his empire using strategies so ruthless and brilliant that the government had to create new laws just to stop him. By the end of this video, you'll know the exact methods that turned a poor farm boy into America's first billionaire, and why these same principles still create fortunes today. Let's start with something most people don't know about Rockefeller. His father was a peddler who often struggled to make ends meet. This wasn't some rich kid playing with daddy's money. John D. Rockefeller was born into poverty in 1839, and his father, Devil Bill Rockefeller, was a traveling snake oil salesman who was barely around. His mother, Eliza, had to raise 5 kids basically alone, scraping together pennies just to put food on the table. But here's where it gets interesting. At age 16, young John got his first job as a bookkeeper, making just $4 a week. That's about $120 in today's money. Most teenagers would blow this on whatever the 1850s version of video games was. But Rockefeller? He did something different. He saved every single penny he could, keeping detailed records of every expense down to the last cent. This obsession with numbers would later become his secret weapon. Even as a teenager, Rockefeller was already thinking like a business owner. He studied every aspect of the business he worked for, learning how they made money and what made them profitable. His mother, Eliza, had taught him willful waste makes woeful want. If you waste money when you have it, you'll be broke when you need it. By age 19, Rockefeller had saved enough to start his own produce business with Maurice Clark. It wasn't glamorous, but it taught him how to run a business from the ground up. The real story begins in 1863 when Rockefeller was just 24 years old. Oil had been discovered in Pennsylvania, and everyone was going crazy trying to strike it rich by drilling wells. But Rockefeller saw something others missed. While everyone else was gambling on finding oil, he noticed that refining oil was where the real money was. Think about it like this. Thousands of people were mining for gold, but only a few were selling the pickaxes and shovels. Rockefeller chose to sell the shovels. In 1870, Rockefeller joined in the oil business, along with his brother William, Samuel Andrews, Henry M. Flagler, and Stephen V. Harkness. Their business, the Standard Oil Company of Ohio, focused on oil refining, which had less variable costs than oil exploration and drilling. This was pure genius. Instead of rolling the dice on whether they'd find oil underground, they guaranteed profits by processing whatever oil others discovered. While everyone else was focused on finding oil, Rockefeller was studying the math. He calculated that oil exploration only returned 10 cents profit per dollar spent, but refining returned 30 to 40 cents. The numbers didn't lie, and Rockefeller always followed the numbers. He understood that oil wells don't last forever, but people will always need refined oil products. So instead of betting on finding oil, he bet on processing it. This is like the difference between gambling and investing. But here's where Rockefeller's true genius kicked in. He didn't just want to be successful, he wanted to own everything. And he had a 3-step plan to do it. Step 1 was vertical integration. He believed that success came from controlling every detail of his business. He hired his own plumber and bought his own plumbing supplies. He built his own cooperative shop and made his own barrels. While competitors bought barrels for $2.50 each, Rockefeller made his own for $1.50. That's $1 saved on every barrel, and when you're producing thousands of barrels, that's serious money. Most business owners thought they were in the oil business. Rockefeller realized he was in the cost-cutting business. Every small advantage added up to one massive advantage. Step 2 was the railroad deal that changed everything. Rockefeller secretly negotiated discounted shipping rates from railroads. But here's the crazy part. He also negotiated a drawback system. Not only did he get cheaper rates, but railroad companies paid him a portion of what his competitors paid to ship their oil. Let me put this in perspective. If it normally costs $1 to ship a barrel, Rockefeller paid only 50 cents. But when his competitor paid the full dollar, the railroad gave Rockefeller 25 cents of that money. So he was saving money and making money from his competitors' shipping costs. This was all legal at the time. Rockefeller didn't break any rules. He was just better at playing the game. Step 3 was the most brutal. With these advantages, Rockefeller would approach competitors and say, "I can sell oil cheaper than you can make it. Sell your company to me now for a fair price, or I'll drive you out of business and buy your equipment for pennies when you go bankrupt." Most people took the deal. But here's what made him different. When Rockefeller bought out a competitor, he kept the best people and learned from their methods. He understood that acquiring a company meant buying their knowledge, not just their equipment. His buyout offers were often generous because he knew treating people well made his entire operation stronger. Rockefeller's leadership style was far-sighted, writes Chernow, and has relied exclusively on numbers to tell him if the company was on track. The oil tycoon kept a handwritten log of all company finances and recorded every single cost, down to the last decimal. He knew exactly how much it cost to refine each gallon of oil, how much profit each customer brought in, and which parts of his business were most valuable. This level of detail gave him an incredible advantage over competitors who were basically guessing at their numbers. Now here's where the story gets really interesting. By 1879, Standard Oil controlled about 90% of America's oil refining. In 1882, Rockefeller's lawyers created an innovative form of corporation to centralize their holdings, giving birth to the Standard Oil Trust. This was basically the first modern corporate empire. Instead of owning a bunch of separate companies, Rockefeller created a trust that controlled everything from one central location. But this level of control came with a price. People started calling him a monopolist, and they weren't wrong. Millions of Americans illuminated their homes with Standard Oil for 1 cent per hour. In doing so, they made Rockefeller the wealthiest man in American history. He was literally in every American home, controlling something as basic as light itself. The government finally stepped in. In 1911, the Supreme Court found Standard Oil in violation of the Sherman Antitrust Act. As a result, Standard Oil was split into 34 independent companies, although over time these corporate descendants regrew into large integrated oil companies that still dominate the market, such as ExxonMobil. They broke up his empire, but here's the crazy part. Rockefeller made even more money from the breakup than he had from the original company. Those 34 companies became worth more separately than they were together. So what were Rockefeller's real secrets? First, he focused on controlling costs rather than chasing revenues. While everyone else was trying to make more money, he was figuring out how to spend less. Second, he understood that controlling the supply chain was more powerful than controlling the product itself. Third, he used data and detailed record-keeping to make better decisions than his competitors. And fourth, he thought long-term while everyone else was thinking short-term. But here's the part that'll blow your mind. These same principles work today. Amazon controls logistics and supply chains. Apple controls every part of their manufacturing process. Netflix created their own content instead of just buying it from others. Google gives away free products to control the data supply chain. Amazon started as a bookstore, but now controls warehouses, delivery, payments, and even the servers powering half the internet. Apple doesn't just make phones. They control the software, app store, manufacturing, and retail stores. Google gives away free email and search because they understand that controlling the infrastructure means controlling the profits. These modern tech giants are using Rockefeller's playbook without even realizing it. Rockefeller became so wealthy that he spent the last 40 years of his life giving away most of his fortune. He created universities, funded medical research, and built institutions that still exist today. The man who was once called the most ruthless businessman in America ended up giving away about $540 million, which would be worth over $15 billion today. But he didn't just throw money at problems. He applied the same systematic thinking to giving that he used to build his fortune. Instead of just giving money to poor people, he funded education programs. Instead of just donating to hospitals, he funded medical research that would prevent diseases. The Rockefeller Foundation is still operating today and has given away over $17 billion. The University of Chicago, which he helped found, is still one of the top universities in the world. This is what separates truly wealthy people from just rich people. They create systems that keep generating value long after they're gone. The real secret behind Rockefeller's wealth wasn't luck, inheritance, or even being in the right place at the right time. It was his obsessive focus on efficiency, his willingness to think differently than everyone else, and his ability to see opportunities where others saw problems. He didn't just build a business. He built a system that generated wealth automatically. That's how you go from a poor farm boy to America's first billionaire. Not by working harder, but by working smarter and thinking bigger than everyone else around you. And look, if this video opened your eyes to how these old-school business strategies still work today, smash that like button and subscribe because we're just getting started. I've got another video coming up about a modern billionaire who used these exact same Rockefeller tactics to build an empire that would make even John D. jealous.